If you like quirky movies, you might know about the View-Ask universe.
Jay said you guys had a Star Wars themed wedding and you tied the knot dressed like stormtroopers.
And he says you're the bitch and you're the butch.
If you're a geek, you probably know about the Whedonverse.
Shiny. Let's be bad guys.
If you're a podcast junkie, you better know about the Merverse.
Let's go to the meeting. I want to get there early enough to make sure I have humans sitting next to me.
Bigot.
Well, there's a new reality in town. The Omniverse. Featuring a wide variety of fiction from podcasting veteran Scott Roche and voice talent from around the internet. If you like getting your earbuds filled with tales about monsters, spaceships, steam-powered battle tanks, and epic wizards, then go to scottroche.com/omniverse or search for Omniverse under the podcast section at the iTunes Store. Your mind will thank you.
PEP Radio is a part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project that plays music, news, and weather, actively advocating for the LGBTQ+ and disabled since 2024.
PEP Radio, available on Live 365, Roku, Alexa, and at paquality.com.
Here at Gay SA Radio, we're very happy to welcome the Othering podcast to our airwaves. Catch the show every Thursday at noon CAT, bringing fresh voices and compelling conversations straight to you.
Head over to gsaradio.stream to find out how you can tune in and become part of our family. Don't miss it, only on Gay SA Radio, where you are family.
One man and one woman join forces to rid the world
What are you doing?
of inequality and fascism.
Seriously?
I'm trying to do a promo here.
For whom? What are you doing?
Welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory. Okay, today we are talking to Scott Roche. Scott is a writer, podcaster, father, and spouse who has long struggled with both physical and mental health. He was diagnosed with gastroparesis a few years ago and is under treatment for that, as well as depression, anxiety, and migraines, GRD, sleep apnea, and ADHD. He also believes that he is on the autism spectrum. Though undiagnosed, all three of his children are diagnosed with ASD, and he sees himself in all three of them. Welcome, Scott. It's great to have you.
Yes, welcome.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
We're so pleased to have you. And so my first question is, with your depression and anxiety and everything that goes with it, how did you get over the hump, I guess you could say, so that you could write your books, especially the one that we platformed for our lovely little Halloween thing, which I enjoyed thoroughly.
First of all, I want to say I appreciate you doing that. And second of all, it's a day-by-day thing. It's really... I tell people I'm one of those authors who works on multiple projects, and I guess I could say I'm one of those creators who works on multiple projects at a time, and that helps me because there are days where whether it's because of my depression and anxiety or what physical symptoms or whatever it may be, or on those rare days where I feel like what I suppose a normal person might feel like. I have choices. So, and I mean, before I was really struggling physically, when most of my struggles were largely mental, and before I was even diagnosed with my depression and anxiety, I used my fiction as a coping mechanism. Okay. My early stories, stuff that you can't find because it's not published anywhere, were dark, and some of my current stuff, make no mistake, is dark, and I find kinship in that with a lot of other horror writers, a lot of us tend to tap into that darkness for our creativity. So in a way, it's a superpower.
It is. But I commend you for that, because I love the creation of, writing books, creating characters, and creating stories. But like for me personally, I have troubles where some days I just can't look at the computer to type, and get my brain to wrap around. We want to do this. We're going to do this. I can't get it to work.
Motivation issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Depression and motivation. Ooh.
Yes. And I mean, a lot of it in my case, and everybody's different, which is something that I learn every day. The medications that I'm on help. And so I'm fortunate to be in a situation where the medications that I happen to be on for a variety of things helps me most days. But that motivation, that ability to, just get started on something is a challenge. And what I often discover is if I can write that first sentence, if I can write that, first paragraph, then the rest of it is like, gaining momentum.
Yeah.
It's overcoming that, initial friction.
Yep. Once you get started, it just starts flowing. And yeah, I understand that completely.
Yes. How do you create your worlds and your characters? Like, where do you dig, I guess you could say, to
Inspiration.
For inspiration? Yes.
It varies, and I tell people it can come from the weirdest places. Like my favorite story is this was when I was just a baby writer. I was cruising down the road, and a truck drove by me on the left-hand side, and it was one of those handyman special, kind of deals with ladders strapped all over it and hanging off of it. And it said it said somebody's name, home improvement, on the side of it. And the last everything after the P in improvement was kind of rusted out, washed out, hard to read. And so all I could see was home imp. And that generated a short story immediately, which was these imps had a business, the front of which was a home improvement business, the back of which was they did dirty deeds, done dirt cheap.
I love that.
I love that too.
And so, yeah, you have to keep your mind open to the universe. Like another favorite of mine is a lot of stuff, like I said, especially early on, that I wrote was dark. And I have 3 kids, as you guys mentioned. And when they got old enough, they're all adults now. When they got old enough to say, Dad, we know you're a writer. We'd like to read something. I had to immediately write something that wouldn't give them nightmares. And so I grew up in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And there is a mystery called the Lost Colony. And it's pretty well established what we think happened to the colonists. It's a happy ending, but I took that plus the name of the first English child born in the colonies, Jenny Dare, and used that to inspire my first young adult science fiction novel. So, inspiration can come from folklore. I just wrote a piece of flash fiction from a Patreon inspired by some cryptozoology from a YouTube channel that I've been mainlining over the last few weeks. So yeah, you just have to keep your antenna up.
So are your kids a big fan, or do they not care because it's just dad stuff?
Probably more the latter.
Okay, yeah, I figured.
Getting your family to read your stuff is just like I tell people, don't, if you're a writer and you have a family, don't expect your family to read your stuff.
Right.
They're not your audience. But if they do, great. Like my wife will occasionally read some of my stuff as long as it's not the dark stuff. She doesn't like. She likes horror movies, and she does the funniest thing. Like when the scary stuff starts, she'll do this. She'll cover her ears. But she'll read my like less scary stuff. I have a cousin that is a fellow Stephen King fan, and she'll read my spookier stuff. But for the most part, yeah, my kids are like, and really, they're not readers. For the most part, they're not readers at all, because who has time?
Exactly. That's how I feel.
Well, I mean, there's always time, I find. It is true that it's hard to sometimes sit down and just, devour the book that you want to read in one sitting. If you're a reader like I am, where I will get lost in the books and I will sit there for hours if I can and just read the book, and everything else just goes away. I don't have my kids, I don't have my husband or my pets anymore. It's just the book.
Yeah, I can't talk to her.
As a reader, like I struggle these days, and part of it is because my vision. I've been transitioning the last few years over to bifocals, and I have a hard time with some print, even with my bifocals, and so I read a lot of ebooks because I can adjust the brightness and the font and all that kind of stuff. So I have a stack of print books that I want to read, need to read, that I am really slow to read, not because of time or anything like that, but just because it's physically the act of reading is difficult.
Yeah. Yes.
How have you always been a reader since you can remember? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
even as a
for
kid.
Sure. My favorite thing I remember when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, I'm guessing. My dad, who was a very strange person, he was generous in some ways and stingy in other ways, bought me a Encyclopedia Britannica.
Okay.
And I read that like it was a book, because nobody told me that wasn't how you were supposed to use encyclopedias.
Yes.
And so I just read encyclopedias cover to cover. I would read anything. I read, ingredients lists on the back of boxes. I still do that. Like I read everything. My wife is like, "How do you know these things, these weird things that you know?" And I'm like, "Because I read everything." I am probably the only person that reads those things when they say, the terms and conditions.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm probably the only person that reads the terms and conditions just because there are words there. So.
You and lawyers.
Yeah, like I just, and that's the other thing. Like I read broadly. I read well outside my genres, into other genres that I don't write in, and that's. I think that makes me a better writer. I think it makes me a better person. I think because it gives me more. Insight into how other people think and more empathy.
Yeah. I do think that reading, produces that empathy, that compassion, because we see so many different worlds, so many different thoughts, so many different actions. But yet a lot of them all come down to the fact of humanity. And, how can humanity find a way to overcome that particular problem? And sometimes it's a horror issue, or just a general business issue, which can be really dry, by the way, but but it doesn't matter. It still comes down to that humanity overcoming something and overcoming it together.
Absolutely. And I like to read say, like, for example, like romance books, because it gives me some insight into relationships.
Yes.
And that's important both as a person and as a writer, because I want to make sure that my characters' relationships are realistic. And I think that, reading those kinds of, books where the focuses are on other things and paying attention, not just reading, but paying attention, reading critically, which is a skill that I think sadly is waning.
Yes.
Agreed.
Is important. When I hear other authors who say, well, I don't really read outside my genre, or I don't really read that much. Authors saying these things out loud on social media, I'm like, first of all, why would you say that out loud on social media? Second of all, why don't you read more? Why don't you read outside your genre? Because it's only going to make you a better it's going to make you better at everything that you do.
Better sentence structure, better words come up with while still keeping it simple and, not needing a dictionary right next to the book kind of thing.
I am guilty. If you read any of my stuff, eventually you're going to run into my love of $5 words.
Yes, I love those words too. And it's important to kind of read those too. Sometimes you don't necessarily want to have to carry the dictionary with the book, but there are times when you do. And it's fun because you learn new words. Like, I remember my mom reading, I can't remember what it was, but it was an Umberto Eco book. And she and I would just look up the words together. And I mean, it's a weird thing, but we would do that.
Does not sound fun to me, but,
but it
I'm
was
a different
fun.
animal.
Dictionaries are another thing. I just love to open a dictionary and just start reading down the list of words and finding out what they mean. Now, the real test is, do you know how to pronounce those words? It's funny, like when I first started writing seriously, I was in a cadre of other writers, and we were all like podcasting our fiction as a way of building an audience and getting our words out there. And because we were all doing this on shoestring budgets, we were narrating our own stuff. And it was always funny when you'd run across an author who knew these big words but never heard them out loud, so didn't know how to pronounce them. So yeah, that's the other thing is like, not only do I know what these words mean, I think I know how to pronounce them too, for the most part.
You should know what they mean and how to pronounce them, I think, if you're going to use them, because you never know what if you became like in the top 10 of New York Times or LA Times or, things like that, and they ask you, so what is this word? And you have no clue what it is, no clue how to pronounce it. It kind of ruins the book, I think.
Yes, my secret fear is like being found out. That I'm not nearly as intellectual as I like to think that I am. So being on some big TV show or podcast with a huge audience, and I insert my foot into my mouth. I love public speaking. I have no fear of it. But yeah, that the fear, the deep fear there is mispronouncing some commonly used word. That's a whole part of the imposter syndrome, I think.
Yes. That's actually a great segue into that, because how do you manage the imposter syndrome? I mean, most successful people who actually, like to introspect and retrospect, use retrospective techniques and kind of look at themselves and see where can I improve and all of that stuff. A lot of them do feel like they're imposters. I feel like I'm an imposter. Just, even talking about books, because I read them. I've written one, but it's just that feeling of, but I'm not supposed to be in this group kind of feeling.
Get comfortable with that feeling, because in my experience, that feeling's probably never going to entirely go away.
Yep.
I deal with it on a regular basis. I always feel like, and part of that is I try to use that as like a humility check. Isn't
that what kids are for?
Yeah. My high school girlfriend, and her favorite thing to tell me was how arrogant I was. And, into my 20s and 30s, people were frequently telling me how arrogant I was or how arrogant I sounded. And I think part of that was being an intelligent person, but not having emotional connection because of that theoretically, undiagnosed autism spectrum disorder, I would come across, I wouldn't intend to be arrogant, but I would come across that way because I would talk well over people's heads.
Yes.
But I wouldn't have like an emotional reaction to things and or wouldn't be connected to people on an emotional level. And so I've really tried hard in my 40s into my 50s now to exercise humility, like a muscle, trying to make sure that, I'm not the smartest. I may be a smart person in the room, but I'm not always the smartest person in the room. And I have written all of these words, but I still have so much to learn when it comes to being an author, being a podcaster, being an editor, whatever it may be, being an IT person, which is what I do and have done for my career for over 25 years now. It's, that imposter syndrome for me may be an evolutionary way of our brains to, sort of check that
Yes.
humility.
No, that's a good point. And when
but it can be crippling.
Yes, it can be. Most definitely. And sometimes it is hard, and you just have to kind of sit back and kind of, I guess you could say, grieve on that aspect and then move on from it.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention, like you mentioned, having that arrogance because you would talk over people's heads. I do that. And like Mike will say, "Where did you get that word from?" I read it. And I've always
used that word.
Yeah, I've always done that, and I'm saying this because I want to commiserate with you about that, because I too have always felt like, am I being arrogant? Am I being like, thinking that I am better than them? Is that how I'm coming off? And sometimes now it's easier for me to kind of see it and try to check it. But I admit that when I was in my teens and 20s and things like that, it was really hard to see it. But once my therapist said, "You're on the spectrum," I was just like, oh my God, oh wow. And everything like made sense finally as to how I act and why I didn't react certain ways. And you mentioning that just kind of opened up another aspect of, oh my God, I do that.
And as I tell my kids, being on the autism spectrum is no excuse for being an asshole.
Well, yes, of course.
Because I actually like I had a coworker years ago who was on the spectrum, and he literally said to me, like, I can be an asshole and get away with it because I'm on the spectrum. And I was like, dude, no,
not at all.
So yeah, like I try and tell my kids, and it's different. Like they're all different, and autism presents differently in AFAB people versus AMAB people, which is something we had to learn. But yeah, like it's important to exercise those things that may come more naturally to other people. We have to exercise those like they were muscles, and just be really, introspective, like you said, and understand that yes, our intentions may be good, and we may not have the intention of coming across as arrogant or self-centered, but because we are built the way we are built, that just means we need to work harder.
And I also think that people who aren't neurodivergent also need to work harder to understand too, because it's a two-way street. They always say that the onus shouldn't be on the repressed person. And I do agree with that. We have to do what we can to be understood and, assimilate into society and be good citizens. But at the same time, those who are on the quote unquote normal spectrum should also work to understand us and not expect everybody to be the exact same or think the exact same.
that's why my wife, who's she says she's the only neurotypical, any kind of typical person in our family. Like she and I have a lot of conversations about, why are our kids like, why did our kids do this? Why aren't they this way? And so I try and help her understand, why sometimes our kids don't communicate the way she feels like they should communicate. And why sometimes they come across as, for example, not as thoughtful as we might have wanted them to be, or as we've wanted to raise them to be, or as as sympathetic or empathetic as we would like them to be. And I just have to remind her, their brains just work differently, and that doesn't mean we can't expect them to be better, but it does mean that we need to understand why they have the struggles they do.
And that's tough to do. We have at least one kid definitely diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and it took us a while throughout his childhood to really grasp why he did what he did and why he was behaving the way he was. It's gotten better now. The older he's gotten, the more we kind of understand his ways, the more we've learned. But that's definitely difficult to understand and figure out how to manage the different, I guess, personalities between the two.
Especially when you have no clue that you're also on the spectrum.
That too.
And so I think that it's a huge disservice that we get so ignored because we don't act the typical way. And because I think it would have been so much better if I had known I was on the spectrum to be able to handle his outbursts and his meltdowns, because then I would have understood better why he was melting down. And because when you don't know and you're also on the spectrum and you're dealing with somebody on the spectrum, sometimes it's just like, it's a battle.
Yeah,
it is 100%. I remember, our middle child, particularly our son, his autism when he was young, like, toddler age into, 8, 9, 10 years old, was the hardest for him and for us of the three of our kids. He was the most nonverbal for the longest time, although these days you can't pay him to shut up. It was just his biggest struggle has always been his temper, continues to be his temper. And as a parent, from strictly speaking about myself, who was at that point when he was a toddler, I was dealing with my own unchecked anxiety and depression and autism spectrum disorder, probably, and other, issues. And then, our marriage was under a lot of other stressors at the time. And it was so hard. Like parenting neurotypical children is hard enough. Under those kinds of stressful situations, parenting neurodivergent children is that much harder.
Yes,
for sure.
It's a challenge, and I think that it's something that I don't know how old you guys are, but like our generation, who are bringing up kids or who have brought up kids over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Are struggling with, because we have our own undiagnosed issues because there just wasn't language,
right? Exactly.
When we were kids, or if there was treatment, it was for very specific edge cases. Whereas now there's a lot more openness and a lot more. The diagnostic models are a lot better than they were. So it's I just tell my kids, every time I can remember to, that, I was not the parent that I would be now if I was under the same situation. And I just hope that we can continue to build and rebuild our relationship in whatever way they've been damaged, because I didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
There's no perfect parent. Just did you try your best? Did you do what you knew and go from there? So
Absolutely.
your mental health issues, your ADD, stuff like that, was that stuff that you had diagnosed early?
No,
or
I
that
wasn't
came later?
diagnosed with ADD until about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's funny looking back, like I was working for a company probably about 20 years ago, and we did like these lunch and learn things on all kinds of topics. And one of the topics was on attention deficit disorder, and mostly it was directed at like parents who may have kids that they thought might be on, might have ADD, and they listed off all of the typical kinds of symptoms. And I was like, I remember walking up to the guy and going, "What if I have all of these symptoms? What does that mean?" And we kind of laughed it off, but like, fast forward 20 years, and I'm finally diagnosed with something that I've known on some level that I have had, my whole life. And being on, attention deficit medicine has been a game changer for me in so many ways. And I would have benefited from it,
Yes.
tremendously. But, the past is the past, and we move forward. And I just appreciate how, better living through chemistry has
Yes.
Yep.
has changed my life and the life of my family. Like we're all on something. And even my wife, who is neurotypical, was diagnosed with ADD as an adult not that long before I was. And actually the reason why I went ahead and did the asked for the word is escaping me. See, this happens as an author
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
The testing.
Asked for the testing, asked for the diagnosis, was because she was like, I've been diagnosed and I've started on this medicine, and I really think you would benefit. So you should probably ask your therapist to do it again, because I had actually had asked initially with a therapist years ago to like, am I ADD? And apparently I didn't answer the questions right. And because I think that's something that happens too, is like, we answer these kinds of really subjective questions the way we think our audience wants us to answer them, rather than answering them honestly.
You're trying to give the correct answer.
Right. And I don't know if that's an autism thing. I don't know if that's like just a human thing. But, I think when I was answering the questions years ago, like when I initially asked to be about a diagnosis, I wasn't answering the questions as honestly, and I wasn't, being transparent about the impact that it was having on my life. And this time around, I was like, yes, it's absolutely having an impact on my life, and here's what's happening. And so, yeah, like I urge people, like if you think you have any kind of serious medical, issue, whether it's health, mental health, physical health, like be open, be honest to your horn, like loudly and often, until you get the help that you need. And I tell my kids regularly, and I think they finally got the message, like you're the only advocate you're ever going to have.
Yes.
Like I am always going to be your advocate. Your mom's always going to be your advocate, but you are the best advocate that you have, because you know better than anybody how you feel. You know what's going on inside you in ways that nobody else is going to know. And if you're not honest and if you don't, beat that drum loudly, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, I have that same issue. I underplay my symptoms all the time when I go to the doctor, even with my therapist. I think I tend to do it sometimes. It's pretty bad. So,
yes, it is.
Speaking of that, you were diagnosed with gastroparesis just a few years ago, you said. Was that late diagnosed because of, like we're talking about, you didn't really express your symptoms, or did that come up later?
So I've always had like occasional stomach issues, but it didn't really start to impact my life in a significant way until right around the time of COVID.
Okay.
And my gastroenterologist doesn't think that's an accident, or incidental or coincidental, because she thinks in her practice, and she's at one of the biggest teaching hospitals in the Southeast. She has seen a large influx of patients, or patients whose symptoms have gotten worse since they had COVID, a serious case of COVID. So, she said that, and in the medical literature, there's not enough studies yet because it's not, it hasn't been long enough.
Yep.
And there just isn't a large enough cohort of people that it's impacted yet. But there is some kind of connection between gastrointestinal health and the COVID virus, long term. So it is very possible. And I want to I want to make sure that I'm not, giving any kind of medical advice,
Right.
etc. But she said it's very possible that my symptoms were exacerbated by COVID. Because I had a bad case about 4 years ago. And ever since then, it's steadily my nausea and my stomach pain, and other related symptoms that I won't go into because nobody wants to hear about those, have steadily gotten worse. And we've tried numerous things, numerous medications, to no avail. And so I recently had another gastric emptying test just a few days ago, and we're still in process of trying to figure out what to do to get some relief. Today is just a bad day in a string of bad days, in that regard. But that's sort of that's one of those things that I've always carried it with me, but it never really had a name, and it wasn't really that bad until the recent past. The funny thing about gastroparesis, which just means your digestion is really slow, is in roughly 30 to 40% of cases, from what I've read, there is a known cause, like you're diabetic, or you've had some kind of abdominal surgery where damage has occurred, something along those lines. There's a known cause, but for over 60% of cases, there's no explicitly known cause for what's happened. And it can be the symptoms can be minor, to occasional, like stomach upset and stomach pain, to my doctor said there are patients that she has that have to go into the hospital once a month and just have to be on IV fluids and have to be on feeding tubes for a period of time until their digestive tract clears. And it's not like a constipation issue. It's like your stomach doesn't empty. And so food just sits in your stomach until it rots. And it's very unpleasant. And I'm grateful that although mine has caused, many sick days and just many, lost productivity across the board, lost family time, etc. I've never had to go into the hospital. I've never, it hasn't gotten that bad yet.
That's good.
That's good.
So, and my gastroenterologist says, there's multiple stages of things we can try before we get to like surgical intervention. There's this really cool thing. So basically, one of the things they think causes it in some cases is in the lining of your stomach. There is, and here we go with the autodidact again. I just have to read everything. There are these cells in the lining of your stomach that are like little electrical cells, and that's what causes your stomach to contract. And so they have developed what is essentially a pacemaker for your stomach, and they implant it just under the skin, and it hooks little electrodes to your stomach, and it makes your stomach contract like it's supposed to normally, and that's what forces the food out of your stomach into your
That's awesome.
Yeah.
large intestine, I think, is what comes next.
It goes into the small intestine and then the large intestine.
Okay. So it's because those cells, I think one of the things that may cause it is those cells start to, for whatever reason, malfunction, and no longer doing the job that they're supposed to do. So that may be a down the road thing for me. It is a down the road. It is a thing that many gastroparesis patients benefit from. Apparently, the only downside to it is, much like a pacemaker, it means surgery every 5 to 7 years to replace the pack,
which kind of sucks because having to get cut open repeatedly, it's kind of scary. And myself, I have a nice large box in my lower back for. It was supposed to stimulate, because of my CRPS, it was supposed to stimulate my spine to stop the pain, going to my brain. And it's dead right now. And it was really painful the first time I got it put in. And I kind of need it to be moved around a little too. So they're going to have to open me up. I've got tattoos for one, so I don't want my tattoos messed up. But I also the thought of having to be cut open again and go through that pain again is what kind of literally paralyzes me, of the thought of even trying to call and get it redone.
I can't even imagine what that must be like. My hope is, because the main reason, as I understand it, that they have to do that for the gastroparesis device and for pacemakers, I think, is because the batteries die.
Right.
And my hope is that as battery technology improves, and they've made serious progress in battery technology over the last couple of years, as that technology improves and as batteries get smaller and better, that will extend the window. I don't know in the case of the device you have implanted if that is related, but
they need to put a little port in your stomach, and then you just plug yourself in and charge it up.
Oh, Tesla.
Yes, exactly.
That would work.
It's a leaf charger.
I do know that for some, I don't know if it's for mine specifically, but I do know that they have rechargeable batteries that can be implanted, and then what they do is that when the battery starts dying, I think you do actually like have it's like magnetized, and then you get like this big magnet. Yeah, and it recharges you, which would be really beneficial, because I doubt I am the only person that is terrified of having to go under the knife again.
Right.
So you'll have one of those like little rings that you have on the back of your cell phone, and you just kind of spun a little ring.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Throw yourself against the wall and hang there for a little bit while you charge.
Hang upside down.
Oh, man. Wouldn't it be amazing if they could, though, run it off the body's natural, electrical system?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I know we'll get there one day.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
Yeah. Probably not in our lifetime.
No.
So maybe this is me speaking from my fear of vomit and being sick, but do you have a bad relationship with food because you're afraid you're going to be sick after eating, or you're afraid whatever's going to happen?
So I almost wish that I got sick, because in my experience, if you vomit, that you'll usually feel better afterwards. Yeah. I never actually vomit, so imagine it's the closest thing I can imagine to explain it to somebody else is, and it's only because we have 3 kids. I imagine it as being just being constantly being morning sick.
Yep.
It's it sounds to me like morning sickness, because my wife had terrible morning sickness with all 3 of our kids.
So did I.
And so her description of what morning sickness was like sounds a lot like what I'm going through. I'm just constantly nauseous I never throw up. I have bathroom issues, but I never vomit. And so my relationship with food these days is I eat when I can. My appetite is hit or miss. I eat a lot of saltines, and Ritz crackers and smoothies are my friend. On those days where calories just need to get into my body, and nutrition just needs to get into my body. And I was actually on an all liquid diet a few years ago just to try it out for a while. So for about 3 or 4 months during Thanksgiving, I was on an all liquid diet, and
That's like the worst time ever.
but I did give myself, like, for the Thanksgiving day, I ate a solid meal,
Okay, good.
and that was okay. But
I thought you were going to say you did a turkey smoothie.
although I will say, like, we got really inventive when I was doing this. My wife we got one of those really expensive blenders, and it gets to temperature. It can bring the ingredients that you're blending up to like a cooking temperature. And my wife would actually put like chicken and other protein into, and it would make a soup like in the blender, but it would be smooth, and everything would be broken down, and it was really good, actually.
Wow.
So I got that's one of the ways I got protein during that period of time. Nowadays, if I do a smoothie, it's protein powder, it's fresh fruit, but yeah, I have to be very careful about what I eat, because too much fiber is not good, which I haven't had broccoli, which is one of my favorite vegetables. I haven't had broccoli in years. I haven't had like a fresh apple. I haven't had an apple in probably 3 or 4 years. Now if it's really cooked down, like applesauce is fine. If you cooked broccoli to, I don't know where you guys are located, but here in the South, we have something called broccoli casserole. And it is like broccoli cooked down to the point where it's just mush and cheese, and it's tasty. But yeah, that's not what I want. I want like real crunchy broccoli. I haven't had it in a long time. So you do have to like, monitor the kinds of things you eat. There's things that I just can't eat because it'll bring me to a grinding halt. And on top of that, I also have GERD, so I've had to cut back on coffee, which is like my everything. Second only to my wife, in terms of giving my life meaning. So yeah, I've switched to drinking a lot more hot tea, and found some good teas that do help a little bit with some of my symptoms. And because Chinese medicine, I'm starting to like broaden my horizons. I'm looking at acupuncture potentially. I'm broadening into like trying some Chinese medicine stuff, because we don't know everything in allopathic medicine, in the Western medicine. And so maybe there's something in these other practices that can be helpful.
I think like a mixture of both would be the best. Some homeopathic where it's, head to toe, everything, therapies or something like that. And then also medicine, because sometimes there's just things you can't kale away. You can use kale all you want, but sometimes it just isn't going to work. So you have to kind of use that as a means of, getting the protein or, things moving if you like kale. I don't. But you can do those things and then also take medicine that kind of helps with the chemistry of your body. Because I think a mixture of both is what our bodies need in order to truly thrive. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to look at both.
No, I think that people have demonized medicine, like actual, like allopathic Western medicine. Like people are like, oh, you take too many pills. And I'm like, well, I take a lot of pills. You're not wrong. I take a lot of pills, but all the pills I take have a purpose. There's science behind them. the same time, I try to eat a balanced diet, and I go to see a therapist, but I also have a spiritual practice. I try and be a pretty well balanced human being in terms of my approach to all things. So I'm not closing the door on any solution. My main thing is, can we apply the scientific method to it rigorously and see what happens? And if we can't do that, then there's probably not a whole lot of benefit there. But at the same time, there's a lot to be said for the principle of placebo. Our mind is a very powerful thing.
Yes.
So if what you're doing is helping you, then I'm not going to be a naysayer.
Right. And I agree with that. If it works for you, great. Just like religion, don't necessarily push it on everyone else. Because
my mother-in-law is a bit like a whole food pusher. Like she really is. Like, if you would just eat like this way, then I'm like, trust me, I have engaged with a nutritionist and all the appropriate medical personnel, and I can't eat the way you want me to eat because the body won't digest all that stuff. But
and that's my point. If it works for you, great. I'm happy. And it's not to say you shouldn't say, hey, this really worked for me. And here's what I did. And then leave it at that.
Yes.
Don't sit there and say it worked for me and it cured my gastroparesis. So you must do it this way. And this is the only way. And because our bodies are different. We react to foods differently. We're going to react to medicines differently. And acupuncture, for some people, works beautifully, but others it may not. And so it should be a suggestion, not a, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
And
well, in the case of like gastric illnesses, like a lot of them aren't diseases in the sense that we don't know what causes them. Like GERD or gastroparesis or there's another one I'm trying to think of, but there are these diseases that are like clusters of symptoms, and the doctors that study these things treat the symptoms, but they don't know what causes it. Like even in my case, like the gastroparesis, like she has told me, like, we don't know what's causing this. And I treat every one of my patients individually because I can't treat them as a group because I don't know what's causing this to happen in them. As a group, I only know individually what their symptoms are, what their medical histories are. So it's not the same as treating diabetes or, whatever, fill in the blank. It's a well-known, well-documented thing where there's a clear path of treatment. It's not like that. There's some element of, we don't know what's causing this in every case. And in some cases we clearly do, but yeah.
But that's why it's hard to sit there and say, this is definitely the cure for it. Because if you don't know why it's happening, if you try that cure, you could end up making it worse, way worse, than if you just listened to the doctor and did what they asked. And it's not to say that doctors are 100%. They make mistakes. They're human. But the thing is that you have to work with them. Make sure, as you said earlier, be your own advocate. Make sure they're listening.
And that's an area where I have some weakness, I guess I could say, about myself. Like I have, and I'm trying to be a better patient and self-advocate in this regard. In the past, like I've waited too long between testing and between, treatment attempts and stuff to be like, like not the current doctor I'm on, but a previous doctor, like he would say, try this for a couple of months. And I would let that linger into 4, 5, 6 months with no real improvement, rather than going back to him after a couple of months and saying this is not working. That's on me. That's not on him. I need to be a better self advocate, and so I'm trying to be better about staying in constant communication with my doctor. And that's an area where I'm glad, like technology, which is one of the things that that's how I earn my living. I think that, making sure that we use the means of communication that we have, because I think if you don't have access to it, I think pretty much most people probably do have access to something like a web portal that lets you communicate with your doctor, or the nurses, or whatever. If you've got access to that, making sure that you're keeping your doctor, or their staff clued in to how you're doing, and making sure that you do that. Be a little bit of a pest.
Yes.
Be a lot of a pest, for that matter.
Especially if you're hurting and, things aren't working. Please, I am guilty of this. Mike's guilty of this. We are not pests, but we should be. Everybody needs to be. We a lot of times people like to blame doctors and hospitals, and it is true that they are part of the issue. They need to listen better in hospitals. It's America. We need to fix that badly too. But also, nobody's going to come and save us. We have to save ourselves. We know what we need. We know how we're going to react to things. And sometimes it's like, surprise. But overall, your body. And so we have to push and say, this hurts, or this isn't going right. And that's how you get better medicine, so that you can trust your doctors. And if that doctor isn't right, find a new one.
Yeah. And that's another thing I wanted to say. Like I got a new doctor. Like, and my old doctor wasn't pissed about it. I mean, your doctor is not going to be mad at you. And if they are, well, then you're better off. Your doctor, he was like, yes, let's find you. Like, not only am I going to recommend you another doctor, I'm going to recommend you somebody that's even more specialized, because I'm a generalist gastroenterologist. I'm going to recommend to you somebody who's more specialized in gastroparesis and who deals with patients who have this problem. And so, yes, like, let's get you to see the right person, so yeah, like, get second opinions, get third opinions, see other doctors. And that again comes back to being your own best advocate. And I am fortunate to have excellent healthcare, excellent insurance. I live in a major metropolitan city where I have a wealth of healthcare providers to choose from, and my insurance covers me pretty much top to bottom, inside and out. The dental healthcare industry is a scam.
Yes,
that's a topic for its own podcast, probably.
It could be, because dental. I haven't talked about dental much because it's just so convoluted and so scammy. And it just feels like you're always constantly getting ripped off when you leave. And it's not necessarily because they want to rip you. Well, some of them might. But it's not necessarily that all of them want to do that. But the way that insurance is set up, it's ridiculous.
Well, I listen to a podcast that's strictly on medical stuff. And it's really good, and it's really popular, and I'm blank on the name of it. It's Sawbones. Really good podcast. They looked at like the dental industry and how that kind of got started, and why there's a disconnect between dentistry and medicine. And it all started like back in the 1800s, when being a doctor started to become a career path and a sort of a status issue. It kind of left dentistry back in the dark ages, and it only recently has caught up. But it's still seen as a separate, like completely separate,
Entity.
completely separate thing.
Yeah.
Even though oral health and physical health are so intrinsically linked, it should all be under one insurance, I guess, is what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yeah.
Physical,
'Cause
mental, and oral health all dictate how we can survive in, our bodies and in, our environments, especially as they change drastically. If you have no teeth, it affects what you can eat. You may not get
Yeah.
protein then, because you don't have any teeth. Sometimes your teeth hurt because something is wrong in your heart or your, other parts of your body. And there have been studies where they show that sometimes your oral health can, provide a glimpse into the future of what your body's going to be like.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have horrible teeth, and part of that is genetic, and part of it is self-care.
Yep.
And that's that's something that my children have had to be very conscious of. Like how much of their health is related to their oral health, and how much of that has been passed down to them, and how much of it is their own self-care.
Right.
But yeah, like I was saying, I have all of these advantages, and I just need to take advantage of the advantages I have.
Right.
Yes.
So, I wish that I have a cousin who lives in Canada, and she married a Canadian, and I just hear about how their system works, and it's got its own flaws. It's not perfect, but the fact that she can go see whoever she needs to go see, and doesn't have to worry about a bill at the end of it all, pretty much, is tremendous.
Yes.
From what I've heard, they just have to wait a long time.
It depends on who they're trying to see.
That depends on the procedure. That depends on so many. Like when people push that back on me, I'm like, well, you don't want to know how long I had to wait to get X procedure done, and I have good insurance.
Right.
I live in Doctors Central in North Carolina. So it's not just a Canadian thing. We're suffering from a drought of general practitioners. We don't have enough GPs in this country,
because
everybody that wants to graduate from medical school wants to be a specialist because they want to make that dollar.
Well, yeah, because they want to be able to pay back their loans too, and unfortunately, general practitioners only earn around. They earn over $100,000, which is great, but some of them, it takes way longer to then pay back all those bills and then be able to then earn money. So they go for the specialists where, you're earning $300,000 a year plus for what you do. And you get more bills doing that, but it pays in the end. And it comes down to teachers, doctors, all of them deserve way more than we give. They're not easy professions. It's not easy to deal with other people who talk. And if you're working with the dead, it's probably really simple. But when you're working with people that are alive and able to talk, or even zombies, whatever, it's hard. And they need to earn what they're doing.
People need to be paid what they're worth.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
If we can pay, these people in sports millions upon millions of dollars who wouldn't be able to play those sports without a teacher, and couldn't perform at top peak without a doctor, they need to be paid better.
Speaking of things that don't get paid enough, we got to start wrapping it up. But before we go, did you want to talk a little bit about your podcast? Those never pay enough.
Yeah, podcasters don't get paid. Well, some of them get paid pretty well.
Yeah,
yes.
If you're famous.
But yeah, so I have started doing a thing where I am interviewing creative people of any stripe, of all stripes, and I'm calling it my Creative Dynamos. And I started doing it about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and that has been such a great project. It's it's one of those, you never know. I have kind of the spaghetti approach to creativity. Like I just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You never know what's going to take off. And I really am happy with the way this is shaping up. So, yeah, I am inviting people on, I don't care if you're like a musician or a painter or a writer or, whatever you do, if it's a creative pursuit, I want you to come on and talk about it with me, and we'll talk about the creative process. And so that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That is really cool because so many people need that creative process. And unfortunately, since it's getting sucked out of schools, you don't get that aspect. And I think, yeah, STEM is important, but art is what makes everything valuable.
100%. I was watching I was watching a YouTube recently, and it had an actor on it. He's the guy that played. His name's Ken Jeong, and he played Senior Chang on Community, and he's been in a variety of movies. And he started out his professional life as a doctor. He gradually transitioned to comedy and acting, and now he's an actor and a comedian, very well known. And he was like, he had to make a decision when he was in pre-med. He was going to Duke, and he auditioned to be in Duke's drama program, and he got accepted, and he had to decide, am I going to do pre-med or am I going to do drama school? And he decided to go pre-med. And he talked about how transitioning back into a creative pursuit away from medicine and becoming a full-time comedian and actor, how much that fed who he was as a person more than the doctor did. And he said, he goes back and he works with Duke's drama department and encourages kids, even if you're not going to leave whatever your major is, be it science or technology or education or whatever it is, pursue something creative. Have a creative pursuit, even if you don't make that your livelihood, because that's going to feed who you are as a human being.
I think creativity is what, discovered X-rays and, discovered what the different metals. Being creative is how we ended up with, dynamite and guns, because they thought out of the box and they used creativity to, how do we solve a problem? And I think in using art, the art process can help create the solutions and make them aesthetically pleasing too, because nobody likes just a block coming at them. They want that creativity of lines and circles and all of those things, which math. And so we gotta stop pushing art out. All of it comes together and helps create such a beautiful not only world, but it helps create the solutions for surgeries or businesses and IT and, things like that.
Definitely. I tell people, my degree is not in IT. My degree is in English literature. And they're like, why are you not using your degree? And I say, I use my degree every day because studying literature gave me the creative thinking skills to do what I do in technology. It gave me the creative skills to do what I do in creating my own literature. So, you never know where your creativity is going to take you.
Yep. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
It has been a thoroughly awesome pleasure.
Do you want to let people know how to find you real quick, how to find your books?
Yeah, you can find, if you just go to scottroche.com, you can find links to all my social media. You can find links to all my books. It's scottroche.com. And links to everything that can be found there. I'm pretty active on Threads YouTube, Facebook, all the usual places, and my books can be found at all the major retailers.
Which is awesome as hell.
Check them out.
Like, I thank you so much for coming on and, sharing your story and, humanizing it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Anytime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Othering Podcast by Mike and Dory. Please like and follow us on all of your favorite social media.
The Othering Podcast is produced by Loudcore Productions, graphics by Josh, and music by Jordy James.